Gotcha.
Might be on the left. Or it might be on the right.
Oh, okay. That's right.
Say that.
I'm on chair one, comes in committee. We'll talk about it. I'll do. Don't shoot them up. I have. Usually supervisors. We had a distance so they can, I think he's just gonna get all the eyes dotted. I know. He figures there might be a late battle or something. Well, Simpson's gonna be an ass about it. Oh, there's no doubt that. Oh, but that's fine. I'm just.
Good morning, everybody. Ask people to come back to their seats. A reminder about your cell phones, if you would silence them, unless, of course, you're involved in emergency services. We'll call this regular Personnel Ways and Means Committee meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. I presume you've all had a chance to read them. I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Support.
It's been moved and seconded. Any comments, corrections, additions? Hearing none, all favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Next, we move to our public comment time. This is public comment for any agenda item, any agenda item. Any public wants to offer a comment on any agenda item? Seeing none, we will move on. We have no rules to review this week. We will now move on to board appointments. Excuse me. We have 3 appointments in front of us today to recommend forward to the full board for approval tomorrow. Tim Kelly from a mental health representative for Bridging the Gap Opioid Subcommittee. Julie Hackett's being recommended for the Department on Aging, and Denise Combs for the Emergency 911 District Board. All their applications were in your packet.
I move that all 3 be appointed to the positions.
Support. Then moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Commissioner Van Doren.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and board members, just so you know, the Tim Kelly change was made from the Director of Mental Health because she could not make it at the times of the meetings, and we couldn't change the meeting because the agenda for televising or live streaming, I should say, meetings is filled up. And the other one, there's the applications are in there for everyone's review as we agreed to in the first meeting of the year. Thank you.
Any further comments? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Matter passed. Next, we have in front of us the employment changes. Anything anybody needs to note with respect to these? Okay, next we'll go to the employee anniversaries. Again, I like to point out the number of people who found our county a delightful place to create a career for 20 and 30 years, with the longest being Sandra Brown on the Maurice Spears campus at 31 years. So we certainly thank you and appreciate your service.
Yes.
Now we have a time with certain mixed feelings. We get a chance to honor one of our own who is retiring, Mr. Tim Meehan. And to that end, we have Commissioner Krasny, who chairs our Physical Resources Committee. And Tim, if you'd come forward, we'd like to honor Tim with a resolution or proclamation.
These are always very impressionable on me and enjoyable to do, but this one's a lot of fun. Over the last several years, I've had the privilege of being on the Physical Resources Committee, and now I chair it. And Mr. Meehan has taught us so much. Several of the commissioners, including Chairman Van Dorn, and I have gone over there numerous times to see all the great work that he and his staff have worked on. And Mr. Meehan has even expanded my vocabulary, and I've learned words I didn't even know. So I appreciate that. Come on over here, Mr. Meehan. I'm not that scary. But so anyways, a retirement proclamation honoring Tim Meehan. Whereas Tim Meehan has dedicated nearly 4 decades of loyal and outstanding service to Lenawee County, beginning his career on April 1st, 1986 as a part-time general laborer. And whereas through hard work, dedication, and a commitment to excellence, Tim quickly advanced in his career. He became a full-time maintenance person on June 24th, 1987, was promoted to maintenance person 2 on June 26, 1989, and continued to grow professionally, earning the role of maintenance person 3 on October 1st, 1998. His leadership and expertise led to his appointment as deputy maintenance superintendent on June 10th, 2005, and ultimately to maintenance superintendent on December 31st, 2010, a position he has held with distinction ever since. And whereas throughout his tenure, Tim has demonstrated exceptional knowledge, skill, and dedication in overseeing the care, safety, and operational excellence of Lenawee County's building and grounds, playing an instrumental role in countless projects and improvements that have benefited employees and the public alike. And whereas Tim has been a mentor to many, including me, a problem solver in times of challenge, and a trusted steward of Lenawee County facilities, always putting pride and purpose into every task, large or small. And whereas his legacy will endure in the well-maintained spaces he helped create and preserve, and in respect and admiration of colleagues, friends, and all who had the privilege of working alongside him. Now therefore, be it proclaimed that we, the Lenawee County Board of Commissioners, do hereby express our deepest gratitude and heartfelt congratulations to Tim Meehan on the occasion of his retirement, and wish him continued health, happiness, and fulfillment in the years ahead. Passed by roll call vote of the Lenawee County Board of Commissioners at a regular meeting held on May 14th, 2025 in the old county courthouse in Adrian, Michigan. I so move.
Or. You have 8 supports.
Can we call the roll? By roll call vote?
Yeah.
Commissioner Blanco.
Yes.
Commissioner Collins.
Yes, but you will be sorely missed.
Commissioner Daly.
Yeah.
Commissioner Krasny.
Yes.
Commissioner Martis.
Yes.
Commissioner Stimson absent. Commissioner Tillotson. Commissioner Van Doren.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Ungst.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Thanks.
And because he's so excited to do so, now I turn the microphone over to Mr. Meehan to say a lot of words.
Oh, hey, Dave, how you doing?
We're live.
Oh, okay. So no parking lot stuff. Okay, gotcha. Went by really fast. I told Rob, get ready. Time flies here at the county. Keep setting the goals, keep going to it, even though you ain't gonna achieve them all. You still gotta have those goals out there. And thank you, Lenawee County, for paying me or my wife the rest of my life. Appreciate that. That's awesome.
Thank you, wife, too, for all your dedication to the county and supporting him in his endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. And before I turn this over to Kim, I would just like to say, I've only been here a couple of years, but the first time I met Tim, he said that he's always conscious of the fact that he's spending his grandchildren's money here at the county. And that's when I knew we were going to be friends. So thank you again, Tim. Kim?
Obviously, I want to wish Tim and his family well wishes with whatever it is that they have planned in this next phase of their lives. I know he's pretty excited about some of the trips and stuff that Mrs. Meehan has planned because he keeps telling us about them. But to that, I also want to say we have a new beginning here. And we have interviewed multiple individuals for the position of maintenance superintendent. We even went through second round interviews. We had a number of very great qualified candidates. In the end, due to the vision and the plans and the things that this gentleman would like to do moving forward, it was a unanimous decision on our committee to offer the position, and it was accepted by Rob Van Uenzie. And so I would just wanted to acknowledge him today. I am very excited to see some of the plans and visions that he has come to fruition. And we'll be keeping tabs to make sure those happen too. So just heads up. But in the meantime, there's also some cupcakes over on the side of the room. Please grab yourself one. And these are in honor of both Mr. Meehan's retirement and Mr. Van Uenzie's new position. So that was all I had, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Rob. Welcome to the new position. Now we'd move on if Administrator Murphy would take us through the finance reports.
Absolutely. We're going to start with the general fund income statement. These were run as of May 9th. I do want to point out again that you are going to start seeing a flip in that the expenses will be outshining the revenues for a little while until the property tax bills start coming in, which is going to be not till this fall. However, the county does have a fund balance that will able to sustain that until such time as those revenues coming in. So as we start with the general fund, I do want to point out on the first page of your reports, 101-149 probate juvenile. If you're looking through these reports like I do, you're going to see a month-to-date revenue of $6,879, but then it says year-to-date revenue of $767, and you begin to wonder, how can that be? The reason for that is there is just over $6,000 of revenue that came in for a grant in 2025 that is being booked back to 2024. So the year-to-date revenue that actually counts for 2025 is only about $767. So I just wanted to point out, if you're reviewing them like I did and you see something that looks upside down, that's kind of what it is. So as we go through to the last page of your general income statement, you will see that to date, we have revenues of just over $5 million and expenditures of with almost $15 million to date. So if we move on to the fund equity changes report, these are all of the different funds that we are responsible for. Starting out with the general fund, which we just talked about, we have the $5.2 million in revenues with $14.8 million in expenditures. If you move on to our special revenue funds, I want to point out some of these non-general fund items because there were a couple of things that looked upside down to me here, and I want to be able to explain them to you. So in any of the areas where you see year-to-date revenues and you see a number with some parentheses around them, in those cases, we are awaiting grant reimbursement. So on Fund 214, which is our sobriety court, that is a grant-funded program. It currently shows year-to-date revenues in the negative of almost $49,000. That is grant funds. We have already made the expenditures and we are waiting to be reimbursed. Under Fund 234, Lenawee Local Emergency, you can see a negative in the revenues of $655. This one's actually a little bit different. We had an expense item in a revenue account, and so we need to back that out and put it in the appropriate account number, and then that will clear that up. Fund 254, Survey Remon, again, you see the $42,000 in brackets. That revenue typically comes in June. So You'll see that in a bracket for another month or two, and then that'll right side itself. So the total for your special revenue funds, you're showing year-to-date revenues of 8.5 million with year-to-date expenditures of almost 16 million. Moving on to the debt service funds, we have year-to-date revenues of 1.1 million and year-to-date expenditures of 1.5 million. Your capital project fund has year-to-date revenues of 1.8 million to expenditures of almost 800,000. Your special assessment districts are showing revenues in the amount of 786,000 in comparison to $596,000 in expenditures. So for all of your governmental funds, which are the funds that we just covered, you're currently seeing year-to-date revenues of 17,500,000 in comparison to year-to-date expenditures of 33,500,000. As we move on through your proprietary funds, the sub-fund, the first one is the enterprise fund. You have year-to-date revenues of 9.3 million in comparison to year-to-date expenditures of 9.4 million. Your internal service fund has almost $130,000 in revenue in comparison to 135,000 in expenditure. So a total for your proprietary funds shows revenues of 9.4 million in comparison to expenditures of 9.5 million. So for all of the funds that we just spoke about, your grand totals, your year-to-date revenues are 27 million compared to your year-to-date expenditures of 43 million. Now, typically, for those of you that are hearing this, I think that sounds like a lot of big numbers and you're really upside down. We have a beginning balance in all of these funds of almost $100 million, and those funds will continue to come in and fix the revenue as we move forward into the fall when those property tax bills come in. So if you have any questions, I will try to answer those for you.
Any questions on the finance reports? Anybody? Thank you, Administrator Murphy. I appreciate that. Next item on our agenda is the Kiwanis Regional Trail Authority. I guess I'll give a brief background, and I'm sure Mr. Steele will give us some more details. But the folks listening at home may not understand, but that we served as a pass-through, correct me at any point, Administrator Murphy, if I misspeak, for I think a $300,000 DNR grant. And that was made available due to the existence of our Parks and Rec plan. It issued now is an outstanding balance of about $180,000 that is owed to the county for the work that we did complete. And so we've had a couple discussions with Mr. Steele and some others, I think, on the Trail Authority. And today they've come to make a presentation to offer us some ideas and their thoughts.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. As Commissioner Krasny says, I'm the second most popular Dusty in Lenawee County, so just want to put that on the board. I'd like to go back in history and just sort of tell you where we came from on all this. It goes back to 2018. 2018, when Kiwanis was working together in the Community Impact Committee, and Jim Kane had came and we went to the city and we talked about how we can make the existing trail better, that we focus on what we have and do the best we can to make it better so that it might attract other municipalities to join in on the effort of beautifying this great treasure we have, as we call it, the Kiwanis Trail. At that time, the city split it with us to do a non-motorized trail that we used Bob Ford of landscape architects and planners out of Lansing. And they did a tremendous job of giving us a proposal to look at what could we focus on going forward, connecting communities, creating loops, beautifying the trail, signage, number of things to try to make that experience better for everybody involved. In 2018, there was a side effort that I wasn't involved in yet. It was going through Chris Miller, Don Taylor, Dave Maxwell, and they were looking at how can they connect the remaining mile and a half from Ives Road into Calzone Park. And at that time, we were stuck with a number of roadblocks as to the owner of the gravel pit was not very flexible at that time. And we were trying to get an easement, see if we could come up with a solution. And we had everybody in the room. And at that time, there was an application for the DNR grant, and we needed to have some assurances that were done to make sure that we get that application in. But we all sat at the table and tried to come up with a solution. And when I say all of us, it was Marty Marshall, Scott Merlat, and all of us, and a number of, from, at the time, it was Manick and Smiths, they were at the table as well. Todd Braun as well, as he joined them, and he had a passion for the trail at that time. Todd worked hard on trying to come up with a solution that was inside the right of way. And finally, with some of his work from people out of Jackson, they figured it out. And we were very excited. And at that time, I joined together Dan Swallow, Janice Montalvo, and Marcy Brown to be part of the fundraising committee to see if we could get this thing to go. It had been contemplated for 25 years. And you can think of Chuck Gross trying to run it out of Tecumseh. He wanted it to happen. We all wanted it to happen. It really was going to connect 4 municipalities if it were to happen. So that application went in. The Kiwanis Regional Charity had not formed at that time, but we were all at the table trying to work that solution together. And one of the crazy things that took place is as we worked together, we started asking ourselves the question, wouldn't it be great if we could put everybody at the table and create an authority to really govern over this trail long-term, make sure that it has its needs and it can be better improved. At that time, Madison was at the table. They chose to step away, and the 4 of us remained, and I was chair as a neutral party on behalf of Kiwanis, because Kiwanis had a long history dating back into the early 70s when the Rails to Trails put this whole thing together. At that time, they were just connecting our city parks, but it extended up into Raisin Township, through Adrian Township, up through that area, and then found a dead end. So on October 1st, 2020, the Kiwanis Regional Trail Authority actually put their articles of incorporation and became an actual authority. With no ownership to the trail, the city of Adrian still, technically, or not even technically, owns the trail at this point in time and had been providing maintenance to it from the very beginning of its build out for all the years that it was there. Another gesture from Adrian Township came in and said, how about we participate in some of the maintenance? And a contribution was made of $10,000. And then again, in the next year, it was another one was $10,000. I think that was around 2018 and 19. When we finally formed, we all came together and said, all right, the city will lower their contribution from about $100,000 down to 50. And then Kiwanis put $12,500 in, and so did the other municipalities, to give us a budget of $100,000 a year to help maintain and improve the trail. In that fundraising effort, as you know, we were moving into COVID at that time, and we were really starting to push it. And I thought we did an amazing job. At the time I wrote this letter, that we were up to 248,000, but at the end of the day, you saw in your packets that we were able to raise $381,735 from 250 donors, of which I included the names. You can see that many of our great companies and our great people in this county made a valiant effort to try to make things happen. Then something changed about the design when there was an actual connection made with Mr. Brown, and he gave us 14-foot of easement, which allowed us to change the design and make it much more beautiful than it being stuck right next to the road. And as that redesign took place, it was sort of an unforeseen expenditure that we were going to have to pay for. And then there was this oversight of, how many trees were there? 336 trees, which was 36,000. And then there was just add-ons and add-ons that took place even after we had completed our fundraising task. The Kiwanis Regional Trail Authority has focused on, we have new signs up with new mile markers. With Ground Zero is in Trestle Park, and there'll be a sign going up there. We did design work and had Manick and Smith go and evaluate all the bridges that we have, and there are a lot of them, and many of them need repair. Some of them are sort of sinking down, or the cement is, so you'll see these ramps, if you will. I'm sure the kids like those ramps, but they're not the safest ramps in the world. And as you dig in and you become more aware of what we need to do, awareness means that you better do something, because now you know of some of the pitfalls and some of the dangers that might be on that trail, and it need to be addressed. So not only beautification and connecting to communities, but we also had in the trail plan 18 zones where we wanted to create loops and connect to other communities, and maybe even connect to ProMedica Hospital, which looked like a natural, and that is one of our projects that's on the shelf at the moment as we try to work through this to see where we're headed into the future. I have a passion for the trail. I think our Kiwanis Club has a passion. We've always wanted to make something big. As you know, our history goes back to that high rise over there, of which lately was not, something we wanted to tie to, but it really did set us forth and we have a foundation that really does great things for the community. And one of our major big impacts we want to have is to improve this trail for the health and wellness of our citizens and to economic development, attracting people to the area. We do know that there are bike runs, there are bike events that have been on the trail. There are a number of runs that go on the trail, and we just see endless possibilities as we go forward, as we connect our cities together and our townships together to really use this trail as much as possible. But there's no doubt we did have an overruns. We can see, and I gave it in detail, so it's about 180,000, 156.77. Right now, we have a fund balance of 150,000 at the Trail Authority. We've done some good work. We've got some consulting work. We paid for some things, but we really are starting to get into a position where how are we going to take ownership of this trail? And what would that look like for the future of this community and this county? I think at the beginning, we thought, let's start from the grassroots. Let's put 4 municipalities together and let's see if we can grow this thing. And we have had communication with Clinton Township and others that are starting to be attracted to the idea that their community might be connected to. And I go through all this history just to give you a backdrop of the passion we all have. But if we were to look at a solution where we paid our 150,000, we'd be out of funds and we'd have to shelf any future possibilities of improvement, and could be fairly detrimental to the authority. As you can see in your packets, there were three different opportunities that we provided, and today we just I want to give that backdrop. I'll let any one of our authorities speak to that, but I really am here to answer any questions and to really come in peace, because I think if we can come up with a solution that's reasonable, that we could all exist as an authority going forward, that it will have positive repercussions for many, many years to come if we put solid foundation of this authority and the responsibility of that trail within it. So any questions? Yes, Jim.
So what's the annual maintenance to maintain that, Dusty?
So it runs about $80,000 to $100,000, more like 80, so we get a little extra overage. And that's really ignoring capital improvements. The city of Adrian has maintained the capital improvements in most of these situations. We had a bridge burn a little bit this last week or 2 weeks ago. That's having to be addressed right now. But we know that each one of those bridges need to be fortified. There needs to be some railings put up and the like. So it's not the operating, and we're getting some great economy of scale. Our people, the city, DPW have been doing a fantastic job on our parks of keeping things clean. Supervisor Hawkins makes sure, because he runs the trail up and down, and he makes sure every pothole has been addressed. And so, but I kid a little bit, but in this fact, to answer your question, 80.
Other questions? Commissioner Collins.
For these bridges that obviously need the work and are in bad repair, was this known prior to the applications for the grant and prior to all the work being done?
I would say that at that time, there hadn't been an opening up, if you will, of the city's maintenance operations, if you will, like, okay, and all of a sudden the other municipalities are there, and we start to do a deep dive into it and say, what is your situation? We'd heard that they were going to redo one of the bridges. And if you look at some of those bridges, they got railroad ties that were into the banks, and those railroad ties are sinking. And so the solution is cement, by the way, and that's a fairly expensive thing. But no, there was not a lot of awareness when we first formed. And again, that was one of our pleas. When we put that together, the analysis of the bridges, it's a question again of how much of this is going to, and will this spread throughout the county as a trail? Connecting Lenawee put a lot of signs up headed out to Hudson and so many other places. And it's hard to conceive that there'd be a 5 or 10 mile run in one of these trails. But everywhere I go, every trip I take, I'm seeing these trails everywhere. They're in so many cities, and there are so many of them. And the other thing that was beneficial, when we met with MDOT, they had a desire to connect these trails throughout the state. And if you could prove to them that you were trying to head towards another community, There was some unlimited funding in the TAP funds. So I learned a lot as I've come along. DNR was just a smaller drop in the bucket compared to what you can really get done if you know what the state is looking for. And so I think a lot bigger than what we just did with the connection to Tecumseh. I think reaching out into all of our county and connecting to Washtenaw's trails and Jackson's trails are all in the future.
I have a question, Dusty.
Sure.
So if we essentially substantially increase the size of this system,
Mhm.
which mean what, doubling it or something to
Right.
reach some of your goals, would it really be looking at a $300,000 or $400,000 a year annual maintenance cost?
It would be, and I think thing that you try not to lead with is that our ultimate goal is to pass a millage for the authority and for whoever joins that authority from that standpoint, so that that can be self-sustaining.
So if we took a board seat, conceivably, we could be on the hook for a millage, the county.
When you say on the hook,
That would open up a pathway for you to access a millage from the county.
yes.
Other questions?
I just have.
Administrator Blanco or Commissioner
Thank
Blanco?
you. About the bridges. So,
I don't-
after you fortify them, like what is the lifespan of a bridge or the, estimated, upkeep of the bridge after that? I'm sure they'll be much better with cement than they are now, but.
Well, just as an estimate, I would say that many of those bridges were built in the 80s. So, and that's where they are from today. So what is that? Almost
Long time.
30, 40 years that those bridges. And the maintenance, there's all these rules nowadays. Ashton, I think there's an organization that gives you what you have to do. So some of the railings, for instance, are not at the proper height. And so the railings have to be rebuilt. As soon as you touch it, you're going to have to rebuild it the way you're supposed to. And so we know what that is. And we have great consultants working with us right now, going through the analysis, and we have a breadth and understanding of what we're up against. But yeah, 30, 40 years.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments? Just a second, Jim. Just so folks know, Commissioner Krasny, Van Doren, and I did meet with Dusty and had some discussions. And at that time, you posed, I think, the three alternatives or options for managing this issue with us, which was a partial forgiveness of the shortfall. Would we consider a multi-year repayment plan? Or would we consider a place on the board of directors to waive membership dues as a way to recover some of our expenses? At that time, we made it clear that even though Jim and Dustin and I only represent 3 of 9, and we're not in a position to make any recommendations on the behalf of the board, and of course, we all reserve our right to change our mind. We felt that the multi-year repayment plan was one that we felt was most likely to be a path forward. Is that something that's still on your list? Is that something you would find acceptable?
Yeah, multi-year payment plan. But again, as you said, I'm one person, and even as chair, today we would like to get your feelings, your ideas, and whatever the case may be, and then go back and deliberate accordingly. But it is one of the options on the table. Absolutely.
I mean, we're not being asked to take any action today, I would say, to the commissioners here. Does anybody want to express any ideas on which of these 3 options they might find attractive? Commissioner Van Doren?
Yeah, you just took away my option, Dusty, when you were talking about the millage. So I was kind of leaning toward, taking a position on the board for partial repayment of this. But if that obligates us, and I just talked to legal, if that obligates us to a millage to the future, then I couldn't do that. So it'd have to be a repayment plan for me.
Other thoughts?
Somebody educate me on that. So if the county is sitting at the table and you say obligate.
If we're a member,
Mm-hmm.
then we would be responsible when you vote for the millage, for part of millage,
That'd be countywide.
countywide.
So, yeah, Dan.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Dan Swallows, City of Tecumseh. I've been involved in this, obviously our deliberations quite a bit, certainly if it were proposed, and again, that's a big if, as a countywide millage, that would be, I think, maybe an ideal situation, but not necessarily a practical situation. There may be many jurisdictions that don't want to participate. And that's the other option they're definitely looking at, is maybe you confine it to the 4 municipalities, that are currently participating. And that's an option as well. Obviously, that's something, we've talked about now doing a survey countywide and to just gain some idea of what the support might be. But I think the reality is that we realize that, all the jurisdictions may not want to participate, and it may be limited to those 4 that are currently participating. Hopefully grow it, but it was not, I don't see it as an obligation if you're on the board. Obviously, there has to be ballot language prepared and presented to the voters. So there's no obligation until the voters actually vote.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yes.
And I would just offer a comment too. I think all of us recognize the value of your hard work and the value of the trail. I mean, I will admit that it was 100 pounds ago, but I used to jog on the trail and ride my bike on the trail. So we do appreciate that. And I think I speak for all of us that we are certainly looking for an amicable way of coming together with something that doesn't harm you, but still makes the people of the county whole. So if there's nothing else, does anybody else have any final comments?
Thank you.
Thank you for, Terry?
Oh, I too would agree with some kind of a lengthy payoff. Excuse me, I share the concern. I understand Mr. Salo's comment, but I share the concern that if in fact we are on the board and that board asks for a millage, then it has to extend to the membership on the board. And I find it hard pressed to commit people outside of those jurisdictions to a millage. That, I mean, we can identify it to those 4 agencies, but the county is still part of it. County is still part and parcel of the whole project. Would be if we were on the board. At least that's what I understand.
Jim?
Yeah, I agree with Chairman Martis that, we want to make sure that, I mean, coming out of economic development, I know how important these trails are to communities. And you're only a few miles away compared to the whole mileage of involved in the Kiwanis Trail from Clinton and Washtenaw County. And if you connected to the Washtenaw County system, man, you'd really have a trail system. So, but I think it's a great trail system. I'd certainly not want to see anything happen with that. But so I'd agree with, I think a lot of my fellow commissioners here that if we could come up with some sort of solution for the repayment that doesn't hurt the Kiwanis Trail moving to the future, that, we all want to see it be part of our community.
Just a final comment on all of that. And as I said, the Trail Authority did not form until after which time the fundraising began. But even in that spirit, I don't want to take a hard line that says that we have no obligation, because to us, we need you guys as an ally and supporter, and your positive, vision of who we are, and that you think that we're a strong ally for our county. And we see that as what we have to have if we're going to even think about a millage going forward. So just so you know that that's the spirit we're in. All right.
I will say, Dusty, and I've said this to you twice, I appreciate, and I know we all appreciate your whole team and your commitment to this community. In the end, we all hang together or we all hang separately, right? And we collaborate on these things. And we do appreciate your commitment to this item and your all very real commitment to making Lenawee County a better place to live. So I just want to be clear on that. So thank you.
Other questions?
All right. Thank you. Thanks, folks. Next item of business. These I more than happily turn over to Administrator Murphy.
Okay, the next thing we have on the agenda is a request for the 2025 tax rate. It's the L 4029. This is a form that the Board of Commissioners are responsible for adopting on an annual basis, and it sets the annual millage rate for the county. The only thing that you can see on here is that the county will continue to collect its reduced levy of 5.4 million, although we are allocated to collect the total amount. We are collecting a lesser amount. The Department on Aging and the medical care facility are subject to a rollback, but they are collecting the maximum amount that they can. And on the veterans relief, that is set by Public Act 214 of 1889. And although we can assess more, we are assessing a small amount on an annual basis so that that fund will continue to have money for our special relief fund for the veterans. So the action before you today is to recommend approval of the 2025 tax rate request, the L 4029, and authorize the board chairman and the county clerk to sign the same.
Do I have a motion to that effect?
I'll move.
Support.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Commissioner Van Doren.
So it's the same as it was in the past, and, you know, I realize everyone's concerned about taxes, but we have a big future project here moving forward when we look over at our judicial building. So I think the administrator's done a great job of managing the budget and also looking forward to the future of what we need to do. So I'm just glad we were able to hold it at the same amount.
Any other comments? Seeing no others, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion matters. Matter passes. Next matter before us, again, I will turn over to Administrator Murphy.
The next one, we have an annual contract with Maximus. This is a consulting firm that does review and evaluate the county services. This is a plan where it utilizes the development of the central services and prepares a cost allocation plan. In other words, then the services that are prepared by those core central service departments, which include departments such as building and grounds, IT, printing and purchasing, the treasurer, the clerk's office, the administrator's office, payroll, finance. Those are examples of core service offices that provide services to all of the other county departments. So the service contract with Maximus goes through, it analyzes those and determines a bill back to those non-general fund departments for those services that are provided within the county. The annual cost to extend this contract is $11,750. That is the same rate that this contract has been for many, many years now. And so the action before you today is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners that the amendment with Maximus Consulting be continued at the cost of $11,750.
Support.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Next issue, Administrator Murphy.
We are almost completed with the renovations of the Department of Health and Human Services at the Human Services Building. This has been a project that has been ongoing since when, Tim? 2018-ish? 17, okay, 2017. So this is a long time happening. It's ironic that it's at the time we're honoring Mr. Meehan in his retirement that we can also say that this project is finally coming to a close. So there are a few little things that we need to do with this project is previously the Board of Commissioners did approve a renewed contract with the state of Michigan through Department of Health and Human Services. But because of the renovations, they actually did not begin to formally occupy or take possession of that space until April 11th of 2025. Fast forward that to officially, since you like to go not mid-month, but the beginning of the month when you're talking about contract language, we now need to do a modification letter that modifies the starting dates and ending dates of the tenant's occupancy of that lease. It is a 30-year lease. And so what we're asking today is to have that new lease start on that was supposed to start on January 1 of 2025 to start on May 1 of 2025. And then each year where that rate will be accelerated has been increased. And you can see that on the attached letter that is with this action request form. So the request today is to recommend the board chairman sign the date modification letter for the lease with the state of Michigan for the DHHS office space in the Human Services Building.
Is there a motion to that effect?
I'll move.
Or
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion or questions? Commissioner Van Doren.
Great work by the administrator and her team. Thank you. It's been a long process, but it's a great contract. So
It's a great contract, and I do have to compliment the maintenance department for hanging in there this long because it has been a long process. DHHS has ultimately, we've been able to work well with them, and I have to thank the other tenants in the building for putting up with all of the construction work that's been done. So
Then we need to call for a vote, right? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And then there was a last minute change to our agenda. Kim can address this briefly.
Yep, there is, one of the things that DHHS would like to do is they would like to replace the blinds that are along the windows. Any of you that are familiar with the Human Services Building, this office is on one of the top floors, and there's a number of windows that go along the outside. This was not something that was included in the original scope of our project, and so we have bid that out. That is a $9,600 cost for the product and installation. Because it is a county-owned building, the county, just like we did with the renovations, needs to be the person who holds the contract with the agency to put in the blinds. And then that cost of $9,600 will be fully refunded back to the county once the project is completed. So the request before you today is to authorize Board Chairman Van Doren to sign the contract change order in the amount of $9,600 for the purchase and installation of blinds in the DHHS office space in the Human Services Building.
So, support.
Been moved and supported. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Next, we're on to the Community Action Agency CDBG Services Contract Request.
For years now, the Community Action Agency has been our third-party administrator for CDBG, or Community Development Block Grant funds, that we have held for emergency repairs and stuff for housing in the public. That grant, we've not had that actual grant for a few years now. However, there are a legacy of loans and grants that are out there. And so as individuals continue to pay on those, the third party is administering those payments, preparing the appropriate reports, and making sure that we stay in compliance with what we need to be doing. That contract with Community Action Agency has expired to perform that service. So attached is a contract that will continue that relationship for another 3 years. So the request before you is to recommend the agreement between Community Action Agency and Lenawee County be approved for a period of 3 years and authorize the board chairman to sign said agreement.
So moved.
Is there a second? Or been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Commissioner Van Doren.
Does that have to be a third party? Because we're taking in the money? It has to be an independent party?
No, that does not have to be an independent party. We could potentially administer our own program.
So before you have a heart attack, okay, I'm just thinking, you know, at one time we were proposing to have a grant person here in the next 3 years. Is that something that could possibly happen?
Depends on how much the Board of Commissioners would like to spend on that type of program. Right now, we are paying much less than it would for a staff person to administer this program. The other benefit to having Community Action Agency as our third-party administrator is they also have a number of other housing programs and funding where they are able to potentially match the needs of the residents that we're servicing on these these CDBG grants with some of the funding that they have. And so economically, it's in the county's better interest to have a third-party administrator to conduct that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Next before us, I would like to bundle these next 4 action request forms. 3 are renewals for law enforcement contracts with Deerfield, Madison Schools, and Addison Village and Addison Schools, and an additional contract with Hidden Lake Gardens.
So moved. Second.
Support.
Any discussion?
Yeah, just for the people here today and for those online, these were vetted out thoroughly in the criminal justice meeting with that group, and the recommendation came here. So I don't want everyone to think that we're just approving these things moving ahead here. So
Sure. 3 of them are renewals. A question to Criminal Justice Committee is, I'm surprised to see Hidden Lake Gardens being added into this. Is there obviously been some law enforcement issue of some kind there that's needed some support? Okay, Sheriff Bevere.
Yeah, happy to answer that question. So Hidden Lake Gardens reached out to us because they're having more events at Hidden Lake Gardens. And I believe last year they had a big event And the area where they're at, although they do have one little extra lane there, doesn't really satisfy the ability to do really good traffic control there. Because when they get big events, I mean, they get a lot of vehicles if you've been up there. So what Hidden Lake Gardens wanted to be able to do, and we do this with other entities, is enter into a contractual agreement. For example, they needed our service not very long ago, Mother's Day, and so we were able to assist them with that. What this will enable us to do is to be able to do an agreement on the fly. So we enter into a contract, they call us up and they say, we need you in 3 weeks because this event popped up and we expect a lot of traffic. We're able to get out there and do traffic control under the contract and make it safer. Our whole goal is to make sure that people coming to Hidden Lake Gardens is safe. And I believe Hidden Lake Gardens has the same feeling, that they want to make sure that they're doing their due diligence to make sure that they're safe. So having a contract like this will enable them to contact us if they need us. We can put it out and at a deputy overtime rate, and it's kind of a win for everybody.
Super. Commissioner Van Doren.
Do you have any say with the state on how they allow passing lanes and not allow passing lanes? I don't know if anybody's ever noticed, but that is a passing lane coming out of Hidden Lakes Gardens. That's the biggest danger I've ever seen in my life. People are turning to the right and they're not going to be looking or turning to the left for somebody that's passing. That should not be a passing zone.
That would be a question for Mr. Marilad.
Okay.
I'll defer to my road commission counterpart on that one. However, you do bring up a good point. When we're out there directing traffic, we have a little bit more control to make it a little safer. So
My compliments on a very effective sidestepping of the question.
Yeah, good job.
But accurate.
There, Sheriff.
That's my favorite answer at township meetings. What about the roads? Oh, sorry.
I learned from the best.
That's right. Any other questions for the sheriff? Thank you, Sheriff. So we have these 4 contracts. If there are any other questions, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Next, we have before us the inmate health care addendum. Administrator Murphy, you'd give us a brief review of this.
Actually, if you don't mind, Chair, for the next few items, the representatives that were requesting these items at Criminal Justice, who are also the experts in these areas, are also here today. So since they took time out of their day, if you wouldn't mind allowing them to come forward.
Sure.
Or if the sheriff or the captain would like to come forward and talk about this. As was expressed at Criminal Justice, the captain was able to work a very good deal. And I think that knowing from his voice or from the sheriff's voice what he was able to accomplish on behalf of the county is important for you to hear directly from them.
And I'm going to turn it over to my captain because he is the subject matter expert on this. And before I say something that is wrong and he has to correct me, I'm just going to let him speak.
Thanks, Sheriff. In 2023, we contracted with VitalCore Healthcare for inmate healthcare. There was an oversight when doing the contract, the RFP, in that they put a $1,200 cap on pharmaceuticals. I think everyone knows that that's really one prescription for someone that may have a genuine healthcare issue in the jail. So in order to budget accordingly, we want to put a cap of $150,000 on there so that we can pre-plan and track those types of expenditures.
Any questions? Is there a motion to proceed with this request?
Second.
Moved and second. Any further discussion? Oh, Administrator Murphy.
Captain, could you talk about the negotiated deal that you were able to make with the first year? Because that's really the part that I think that this commission would be interested in hearing.
Well, when the oversight was caught by myself, they sent the regional director out because they wanted to bill us for $149,000 because it was over the $1,200 cap. I actually got them to absorb those monies because of the oversight. And moving forward, that saved us approximately $100,000.
Wonderful. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? And Sheriff, I was just teasing you. You know that, right? Okay. Let the record reflect. All right. If there's no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Now, if you folks will stay there, I want to preface this by saying there's been some pretty substantial discussion on the issue of these flock cameras. I've heard commissioners and the administration express questions about location, civil liberties questions, procedural questions, et cetera. Talking with the chair of criminal justice at this point, you guys can do what you like, of course, but I would be pleased to entertain a motion to refer this back to criminal justice for a further exposition of some of these issues rather than taking up time here.
So move.
Support.
Any discussion? Commissioner Van Doren.
Okay, explain a little bit to us for,
We're going to, rather than take action on this today, we'll send it back down to criminal justice where commissioners who have additional questions and those kinds of things can have a longer discussion on some of these questions and look for some resolutions to some of these concerns before we bring it back to Ways and Means.
and so are we going to make that a committee of the whole, please?
If you wish.
For that meeting, I think if we're going to refer it back and we want input from the commissioners, it should be a committee of the whole.
Do we need a motion to amend then to make it committee of the whole?
Yes.
Okay, a motion and.
I amend my motion to reflect that.
Okay, so that we will send this back to, so then the motion,
It's
let's,
just a committee.
let's clear the floor and let's start over. Terry, if you'd make a new motion.
I would move to postpone the discussion on this, have it referred back to criminal justice meeting, which will at that time be a meeting of the whole for further discussion.
Their support? Any further discussion? Commissioner, Sheriff Bevere.
The only thing I would like to add is that I can't guarantee the pricing. I'm dealing with vendor and we all know that vendors are very time sensitive on a lot of things. So I just wanted to throw that out there just to.
Understood. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
What's next? Oh, this is a long one. I'll turn this back over to Administrator Murphy.
No, it's not that long. As you all know, last year we were made aware through MMRMA that they do not cover liability coverage for our public defenders. And so we needed to obtain a separate policy to cover them. That policy is now up for renewal. And we went back to that provider to get a quote. Those rates went up a little bit, so we did get a competitive quote. So you can see in your packet, we did have Alta Pro come in at two different rates of $26,000 and $23,000. And then we also got another quote from a company called James River Insurance in the amount of $17,157.95. Just for the group that are here today, this was discussed at Criminal Justice. A total of $14,000 will cover the 9 public defenders handling criminal cases, which will then be submitted and reimbursed through the Michigan Indigent Defense Council funding or the MIDC funding that we receive. The remaining $3,119 will be applied to the CPLR or the Child Protection Legal Representation Grant, which we have 2 attorneys that fall under that category. They work with children and families involved in abuse and neglect cases. Only 25% of the cost, though, can be absorbed by that particular grant, meaning that there's about just over $2,300 that will be applied to general fund. This is something that is budgeted. It's in the current budget to pay for this insurance, so we should not have a problem with that. So what's before you today is to recommend the Board of Commissioners to accept and sign the James River insurance quote in the amount of $17,157.95 and to bind the county for professional liability insurance for the Public Defender's Office.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Or
Moved and seconded. Any discussion or questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next, we have a matter from a friend of the court. Yeah, Kim, give us a brief review of that if you would.
Well, again, this is one of those items. I have friend of the court, McFarland, here today. I don't know if you want to come forward and talk about this on behalf. You did bring this to criminal justice.
Thank you. So Lenawee County Friend of the Court has a contract with MGT. It's significant because MGT helps us keep track of and account for our 4D expenses. By doing that, we can get reimbursements from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. We've had this contract since the year 2016. During that time period, there's not been any increases whatsoever in the contract. However, due to recent cost of postage, paper, and necessary software updates so that we are compliant with Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, there has to be an increase. And that increase will only be in the amount of $633.36. And so that is what we are requesting.
The request? Give me, the request today is for $5,200 with $3,089 being reimbursed by the state and the total county share, $2,111 from the general fund. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Support.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We're going to bundle the next two together because they're two identical purchases of two identical pickups. So I don't know. I don't think we need to bring Ed forward on this. It seems like a reasonable plan, and I appreciate the fact that in talking to Drain Commissioner Scheffler that you have 20 vehicles, is that right? That there's a long-term strategy to replace these on a rotating cycle. And I also will say I thought that was a pretty good price for a 3/4 ton work truck. So if I would entertain a motion to approve the purchases of both these trucks.
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. And our final one before we go into executive session is the request for a commissioning agent with respect to the Maurice Spears. I don't know if you wanted Shannon to discuss this or if you wanted to.
I've got that for you. So with the work that's going on at Maurice Spear campus, there's a lot of new systems that are being put in place, and we need to have a third party come in and commission all those systems to make sure that they are operating in the way that they need to operate. We did get 4 bids on this to consider. Fishbeck was $28,500, Matrix $46,500. Osborne at $34,700 and FSTHEA at $42,442. This is something that we need to accept the bid on because we are able to take advantage of the no taxes that we are subject to. If our construction manager Granger were to have done this on their own, they would be subject to the tax. So this is before you today to accept the bid from Fishbeck in the amount of $20,500 and to recommend Board of Commissioners to accept the Fishbeck contract for commissioning agent at the Maurice Spear campus expansion.
Correction, I think it's $28,850.
I'm sorry, that's what I meant to say.
Okay, that's fine. Is there a motion to that effect?
Support.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Now comes Commissioner Van Dorn.
Just before we're going into executive session, so could I just ask the sheriff a question? Did you say there was a timing issue on that or pricing?
There could be.
I can't guarantee that quote will.
Okay, but you
will
don't
be
know
the
that.
same. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Currently guaranteed for a period of time.
I can look it up. I don't know exactly what the quote says for how the duration is, but yeah.
Okay.
I know it'll take a month easy. And so I just wanted the board to be aware.
Okay, thank you. Now is the time for the annual performance evaluation for Administrator Murphy. We're allowed to do that in executive session upon the request of the administrator, which has been received. To that end, I would entertain a motion to move into executive session for the purpose of. All in favor signify by saying aye. Oh, excuse.
No,
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we'd have to do roll call.
who seconded that?
Krasny.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Chris, if you'd read the roll.
Commissioner Ungst,
Yes.
Commissioner Blanco,
Yes.
Commissioner Collins, Commissioner Daly, Commissioner Krasny,
Yes.
Commissioner Martis.
Yes.
Commissioner Stimson absent, Commissioner Tillotson.
Yes.
Commissioner Van Doren,
Yes.
8 yeas.
And when we finish, you'll see there'll be either white or black smoke coming from the chimney. I'm kidding.
We're not gonna
I
put.
guess we're coming back. We did take.
Oh, my goodness. So you
Okay, we're back in open session. Commissioner Daley's attending to a personal matter, but I think we can continue. Are there any additional items for the consent agenda? Any public comment for any non-agenda item?
Do we have to vote on anything for your review or no?
No, but tomorrow we'll bring a resolution forward and that'll be your action item.
Okay, yeah, okay, gotcha.
All right, any public comment on any non-agenda item? Any commissioner comment? Seeing none, hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Support.
Wow, you did pretty good.
All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.